Welcome, please.
The siren of science.
Now, okay, thank you, honey. Now, Jennifer, welcome, Siren.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, there you go. And also, I just want to tell you that you probably didn't hear our earlier story about how dogs poop on a north-south pole polarity thing.
I missed that one,
yeah,
actually.
and I think you would have enjoyed that. But I think more than that, that's probably an opportunity for, that might be an opportunity for, that thing where students can go online and report things.
Yeah.
They could
be a
all
citizen
talk about
science
where the
project.
dogs pooped.
Yeah, that's a good idea. In fact, you could
Why are you encouraging this?
You know what? This is great because now I'll have to remember you take a compass as well as plastic bags out. Okay, that's good to know.
I mean, you could use your smartphone for this, but let's not get.
Oh, no, let's move on. Okay.
Oh, please.
Eileen Eileen's a little under the weather after partying on her birthday yesterday. Happy birthday.
Hey, knock it off.
Yeah, and bring that down, just down straight. Yeah, like that.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay, so anyway, what do you got?
Well, I thought because the new year is here, and it's time for the annual ritual of resolutions, that I'm sure we've all vowed to either break some habits or create some new behaviors. So I thought I'd devote this segment to the science of habits.
Okay.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I am one of the few people who want to write a book about New Year's resolutions because I do them every year and I do a ton of them and I follow them all year.
You do?
It's a very
You do?
No, it's a very constructive thing for me, about writing and singing and this and that and the other thing. And I have I don't just do it like I want to feel better. I do it with, measurable amounts and it helps. It's like an outline for the year for me. So I think they're great. But anyway.
Well, that's great because a lot of people, they have great intentions, but,
Right.
but it's really hard to follow them.
Right.
So there's lots of studies out there. There's books written. There's websites all about how do you develop new habits and,
Right.
and how do you keep your resolutions. And I was just going to start by saying that Aristotle is credited as saying, we are what we repeatedly do. So
yeah.
habits are really just, trying to create carve these new pathways, like we were talking about neuroplasticity before. Mm-hmm. It is about that. And they're important because they kind of free up your brain power. If something is a habit, it's kind of on autopilot. So, you can focus on more urgent matters if something becomes habit, like, while you're brushing your teeth, then you can be thinking about the day or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it turns out that there's actually a science to this habit formation, and many behavioral scientists are studying these things. In fact, one of the things I found that was interesting was there are researchers now that are helping to design a lot of these mobile applications that you have on your smartphones to understand what does it take to make a habit of going to Instagram or going to Twitter. So they're crafting this into the software of these new applications.
Right, because it doesn't help them if you go once.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're actually working with researchers at Stanford to understand how can we design this mobile app so that it becomes a habit for this person to go to Instagram.
Yeah.
It's kind of evil in a way,
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, what's the difference between that and addictive substance?
Well, I think that is more biochemical than habit creation.
Yeah, but they're both still evil.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, honey.
Yes.
But aren't we already addicted to, or at least a lot of us, to getting on your iPhone and looking at your email or messages constantly? So
Right.
to be able
Definitely.
to program yourself
Yeah.
to do that as well
Yeah.
would be
Well,
better.
Well, then that would be a breaking your habit for
That-
a New Year's
yeah,
resolution.
yeah.
Don't check your email every 5 seconds.
Right.
But anyway, I came across this interesting book that was just published.
What is that?
I don't know.
Oh, someone outside has a drum or something. Oh, no. Hey, hi. Yeah, hang on. Okay.
So I came across this book called Making Habits, Breaking Habits, Why We Do Things, Why We Don't, and How to Make Them Stick. And you can purchase that at our local Reader's Bookstore. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. I already
good.
just did a plug for readers. Love them.
Okay. So you probably heard the that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. But
Always
it turns
heard that.
out that that's not altogether true.
Oh no!
And it makes sense because it depends on the kind of habit that you're trying to create or
Right.
break.
Right.
If you're trying to create if you're trying to just floss every day or something, you
Yeah.
can actually do that in a week probably.
Right.
But if you're going to quit smoking, it's going to take more than 3 weeks. So you just have to be ready for that. And the idea is really to get to this autopilot stage in a habit forming, and this word I came across this word automaticity. So
Automaticity.
That's our challenge
Okay,
word. for
yes,
the
I'd like
guys
to
at
challenge
Five.
the other guys at 5 to use automaticity
automaticity.
in a sentence this
Yes.
week. Thank you. Okay.
So
I think
that's
we're-
really just programming a new behavior.
And I think since Jennifer's been here, we're like 7 for 7. I don't believe that any of these
No
challenges
one.
have been met, but it's fun anyway. Okay.
Okay, so the goal is really to make new behaviors automatic because once it's habit, then you really don't need willpower, motivation, self-control. You're just on autopilot.
Right.
So here are some tips to make habits stick. One is to make it daily in the beginning, even if it's something that you eventually want to do 3 times a week. When you're first starting a new habit, you should do it every single day.
Okay.
And I think that's important because
Yeah.
it's just it's just trickier to lock in a new habit when you do it every,
Makes sense.
2
Yeah.
times a week or something like that.
Yeah.
The other one is start simple. A lot of, especially at New Year's, I think people want to recreate their whole entire life and they make this big long list of really ambitious goals, and that's really just sabotaging your your chances of success. So try to just focus on 1 or 2 things that you really want to hone in on. Don't try to lose 50 pounds and quit smoking and learn to speak Mandarin Chinese all in all,
you got a
all
year.
in the first month.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
But you could do
Right.
those one at a time,
That's
but
correct.
not all
Yeah, that's
together.
true.
Definitely failure is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the things I read said that's the number one mistake is really not going small enough and taking things in little pieces.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's one of these behavioral researchers who's at Stanford. He's the director of Persuasive Technology Lab. Which
Oh,
I thought
that's
was very
fabulous.
interesting. He started a website called tinyhabits.com, and he talks about chunking things down to tiny little habits. So instead of saying, I'm going to run 3 miles every day, just maybe your habit is to put your shoes on every day. Put your running shoes on every morning. And once you get into the habit of doing that, then it's kind of like tricking yourself. But these are the things that work. And 17,000 people have logged onto this website and tracked their progress doing tiny habits. And that's on the road to developing bigger habits. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
The only place where I don't think that would work is something like losing weight. Like if you just said, okay, well, I'm just not going to eat one thing. I think most people need much more momentum than that to keep it going.
Yeah.
Like I think certain things you have to change by really immersing yourself in a completely other thing. Because if
Yeah.
you just say, oh, just a little bit like that, I get where that's coming from.
I think this is more for creating new habits than for
Right.
giving up
Yeah.
other
Right.
ones.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the
So
psychology
true. Yeah.
around breaking a habit is quite different than creating a habit.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
that's a good point. The other one is stay consistent. And that means the context in which you're doing it. So if your goal is to exercise, do it in the same time, the same place. Having a cue of a time of day and a place, or the circumstances under which you're doing it, those are all good things to help you develop a new habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, along those lines, that morning and evening habits seem to be easier to work on than in the middle of the day. Because the middle of the day, it's too unpredictable.
Right. Right.
And so you can't really focus on something. But when you first wake up, or just as you're closing your day down, that's a good time to focus on a new behavior.
Well, the opposite side of that, because I used to do hypnotherapy a lot, and I looked at habits, and like when someone smokes, is that they've made that a ritual. You know, so
Yes.
that's the hardest thing to get rid of. It's not like they can sit there and say, I want to continue to smoke. They don't. But when they're having a cup of coffee in the morning or whatever, I mean, so it actually
Yeah.
pays heed to why that's true when you're trying to add something good, because it's the hardest part of most habits to break is like somebody thinks, well, I'm not going to drink. And then they go out with the girls, you know, or
Right.
whatever just
Right.
automatically
Right.
puts you there.
Well, that kind of leads to the next one, which is to form a trigger. And a lot of times the trigger is for the bad habit, but you need to replace it with a new trigger. So, you know, it's a ritual that you use right before executing your new behavior. Like, okay, in the morning, I turn the coffee machine on, then I put my running shoes on.
Yeah.
Or I read this one person had a goal of meditating in the morning, and she made up this little acronym called RPM. So she'd get up and say it out loud, RPM, and it meant rise, pee, meditate. So that was her trigger.
Yeah.
And it's really, it has to be specific. I think that's another key. You can't just say, after dinner, I'm going to write a page on my blog every day. It has to be something more like when I put my my dinner plate in the dishwasher, then I write a page. It's got to be
Yeah.
a really specific thing.
Yeah.
And then the timing, a lot of sites are saying 30 days, commit to at least 30 days. But again, there is some controversy and it depends on what you're trying to do. But a month is kind of a good chunk of time, and it fits nicely into your calendar, so you can say, I'm gonna do this for the month of January.
Yeah.
And then that can, you know.
You know, one thing I'd like to add to
That's
that from my own experience with resolutions is you say in this month of 30 days, I'm going to meditate 20 times. And the reason why I think that's important is because if you say I'm going to meditate every day for a month, the first time, at least for me, I'm like a momentum person. The first time you miss it, you go, well, I blew it.
Right.
You know, so you got to like say, okay, I'm going to do 25 times in 30 days or something, because then you don't feel like you've lost the whole month.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, one thing I read was treat it as an experiment. And so there's an
Yeah.
experiment isn't a
failure. Yeah.
It just has different outcomes.
Right.
So maybe your
Right.
outcome is 25 out of 30
Yeah.
days you meditated, and you can look
That's a
at
good
it that
way
way
to look at
as a non-judgmental way.
Yeah,
of
that's a
doing
good way to frame it. Yeah.
remove temptation if you're trying to break some habit, like, you know, throw out all your junk food and cancel your cable subscription and throw out cigarettes, things like that.
And get rid of the kisses out in the lobby.
Yeah, Eileen had really she had really a strong feeling about not eating those, and then she came in and they were there. So yeah,
Yeah, it's hard when they're right in front of you.
yeah,
Reward yourself. And this isn't, you know, where you go running and then you get an ice cream sundae. That's not the kind of reward. Actually, they're saying that just self-congratulations, you know, just literally patting yourself on the back, saying out loud, I'm awesome for doing that, or fist pump, you know, something that you start associating a happy emotion with this habit. Mm-hmm. And there's actually some neurochemistry involved with that. This dopamine is released, and so we want to be happy. So the glue that holds this new habit together is linking it to a positive emotion. So that's an important thing that kept coming up, consistent strategy. Another one is writing it down. Writing a resolution down, it's important. It clarifies your ideas and focuses on the end result. And I read one study that 46% of the resolutions were achieved with no written goals, and it improved to 64% when they were written down, and then it improved to 76 when they were written down and then shared with others. So that sort of witnessing and saying it out loud to someone else, that kind of sense of accountability, I think that's
important
too.
when you're on a diet and you put down exactly what you ate.
Yeah.
Because you look at it and you think, oh, I didn't eat that much. And then you look at all the stuff that you,
Yeah.
oh, God, you know, I did eat a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it, you know, you just kind of.
And the other thing on the positive side, when you're saying, well, when you do something, you go that, you know, wow, I'm great. I think most of us wouldn't buy that if we said it to ourselves. But if you say it to a bunch of people, it's much more effective, where they go, that's great, you did that. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, that it's much easier for most of us to
Right.
get the win from that, from
Right,
sharing it,
right.
than, you know.
Yeah, that's another one. Get a buddy.
Yeah.
The accountability to another person. It's a big motivator.
Get a buddy, get a life.
buddy. Don't try this alone.
Yeah.
Get a buddy.
Oh, that's great.
And
Yeah.
there are actually a lot of online tools now, of course. Everything's online.
Yeah.
But this tinyhabits.com is one of the things
I'm gonna
that
look
I
that
came
up.
across. That's the little baby step one by the Stanford researcher. Then there's another one, Create New Habits. And these are all, you log in, you basically are accountable to the people online. If you don't have a buddy, you can have an online buddy.
That's right.
Yeah.
They may not be who they represent themselves as, but they are your
that's
online
true.
buddy.
So, and one of the things I found that was interesting, a reason for developing some good habits is that during times of stress, we always feel like, oh, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket when we are under stress. But it turns out that we actually fall back to our habits. So if you have good habits, you're actually going to maintain the good habits during stress. You're not going to actually change. So if you normally eat healthy, say, and you're going through a stressful period, you're not going to just go out and have junk food. You're not going to go have a Big Mac because that's not the way that you normally operate. So they actually did some studies with students at USC during exam periods, and they monitored what their behaviors were before and during the exam periods. And students that normally read the newspaper continued to do that during exam period, even though you would think there wouldn't be any time and they would cut that out. But because it was a habit, they actually
Right.
kept doing it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting. So, if you have a regular
Works for me.
yoga practice or
Yeah.
something and you have a stressful period, like you're going through a divorce or something, you would continue your yoga practice. You are probably not likely to just sit on the couch all day and eat
Right.
bonbons. So, that was kind of...
I was in a long grocery line yesterday or the day before, and I was reading about Jenna Tatum, who's Channing Tatum's wife, and they met dancing. She's a dancer, and she just had a baby, and she had 40 extra pounds. And she said, I've never had to do anything to lose weight because I've been dancing so much. And so she said all she thought about, and of course she looks great, but she's a beautiful girl, but she said all she thought about was every day I just want to move around more. And that's it. Like every day I'm just going to be more physical. And she said it was like, it reminded me of that because she said the more she did it, the more she reclaimed who she was before that
Right.
period.
Right.
And then it just became what it was because she was back to being her,
Right.
like after that period of time.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So, the good news is that we can create new pathways, and it's just a matter of practice. And
I have a question about something you just said, siren of science. When you say periods of stress, I've started to wonder whether or not I don't even know what stress means anymore. Does it? Is there a
it is
definable
used-
thing?
Yeah, I think, cortisol levels, there's hormones that are released when you're under stress that have deleterious effects on us. And so you could define it that way. I think it is used quite a bit for a catch-all for everything.
yeah.
I'm in a traffic jam, I'm stressed. So
So did
it
it-
depends on what, but I would say in this context, I was meaning, a life event,
Right.
something
Right.
stressful.
But I was just curious about that because I thought, well, is there ever a period of not having stress in the sense that there's just pressure involved in getting through a day? But I was wondering, and you're kind of answering that it might have, that originally it had to do with a change in levels, kind of. That
Well, then there's also a stress test, which is more of a cardiovascular
Yeah.
stress. So there's lots of stresses that our body can undergo.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on the context that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But if they're doing a scientific study on mice that are stressed, they would probably be talking about either they would be talking about a physical stress and
an
their-
aggravating condition that they give the mice or something.
Right.
Yeah.
That they can measure the levels of cortisol or
Right.
something and then determine that they are in a state of stress.
Yeah. Well, I would think if they're running around those mazes, they're in a state of stress.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being in the lab is a state of stress.
Yes.
So tinyhabits.com and
createnewhabits.com.
createnewhabits.com.
Very cool.
That's
And then
cool.
I just wanted to end with a quote from Benjamin Franklin that that I found. Your net worth, this is according to Ben Franklin, quote, your net worth to the world is usually determined by what remains after your bad habits are subtracted from your good ones.
Good old Ben.
It's the pros and cons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's really great.
So I hope everyone, I wish you all luck on your New Year's resolution.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Very
excellent.
good.
Good segment.
Yay, very good. You know, my friends and I used to have a thing like that about celebrities because everybody knew about every celebrity in LA, and a fair number of them are insane. Are really insane. But we decided that it only mattered. I mean, if their talent was less than their insanity, then they were just wipe offs.
Right,
You just forget
right,
it. You know.
right.
But if they were truly brilliant, then you had to sort of put up with their insanity.
Right.
Like you chose to
I think
ignore that,
that's-
but that's like the Ben
that's
Franklin
true
thing.
of every,
you know? Okay,
that's
let's
true
see.
of Friends too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
What are you saying? No.
No, I think it's absolutely true. You can put up with a whole lot of things from people that you love.
That's so true. Well, you've been listening to
The Siren of Silence.
I love it.
Okay.